Hello everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about how we can utilize some natural products and essential oils to help us balance our emotions. Balancing our emotions can be challenging at any given time, as many of us wear many different hats. And as we try and find that balance in our life, sometimes our emotions are like a roller coaster, right? Where sometimes we are this state of euphoria and we're in this state of high, and other times as things happen and we don't feel quite as balanced, we kind of come to a low, and our ultimate goal is to stay kind of balanced, right? In a happy, productive state. And there's many reasons why we all yearn that and seek that, right? And it has to do with the biochemistry that we have in our bodies. Depending on what type of mood or emotional state we're in, can really depend on what type of chemistries our bodies are making within. And so we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But there's a significant connection between emotional health and physical health. And when we're doing better emotionally, we tend to be doing better physically, and vice versa. When we're doing better physically, we can tend to be doing better emotionally. And we're going to really talk about that as well a little bit later, and particularly in class 2 of emotion. So there's so much to talk about emotion and emotional health that I'm actually going to do it in 2 classes. And class 2 really is going to talk about that physical connection and what we can do physically to help keep our emotions balanced. But pertinent to tonight's class, we're going to really talk about the changes that our body does without us even knowing it, without us telling it to. It's an automatic function that our body has. And it really has to do with what chemistries our body is producing and why it's producing that. So I first want to start off by letting people know that when I was first introduced to oils, what really convinced me that there is something to oils is the emotional stability that I saw that it provided my sister. So when I was first introduced, my sister introduced me to him, and she was kind of in a really unbalanced emotional state as they got some devastating news related to her husband's health. And her emotions were all over the place. And she was introduced to the oils and found huge benefits to it, and then introduced me to them. And I wasn't really sold on them. I wasn't sold on them at all, but I saw as my sister used them for her physical ailments, how it helped her balance her emotions, and how she could keep her emotions in check even during a very traumatic time for him. And that's when I decided that I needed to dig a little bit deeper. The nurse side of me didn't believe it. Probably part of me didn't really want to believe it. But when I saw it for myself, and I saw that when my sister used her oils, even when she was really upset, I could let her know, hey, you need to go put your oils on, and then you need to call me back in 10 minutes so we can discuss this, because I can't quite understand what you're trying to get out to me. And when she called me in 10 minutes, was she still upset? Yeah, absolutely. But she was more in control. She could speak more eloquently. She could let me know what was going on so we could help make decisions on what we needed to do for her husband's health. And that was absolutely intriguing to me. And so that's when I decided I needed to dig a little bit deeper. Not only was it helping with my sister's physical ailments, it inadvertently was helping with her emotional balance. And that's fascinating, because what I love about that is it gives us the tools right at our fingertips to help us make a change and to empower us to care for our minds, our bodies, our spirits, our souls. And it wasn't dependent on anything else. She had that right at her fingertips. So when I was talking about the biochemistries before, depending on what's going on in our brain depends on what chemistries our bodies are releasing. So there's a few main chemistries that I want to talk about, or hormones. One is serotonin. That's the one that has, when it's low, has been associated with feeling down in the dumps and not being able to kind of pull ourselves up into a functional state. Okay, so when we need a happier response, we need that serotonin level to come up. When our serotonin levels are up, we are in a more balanced state. It's a happier state. It's a more functional state for us. It's an optimistic state for us. And so we need to help trigger our mind and our brain to release the serotonin. It helps us regulate our mood. It helps us with our social interactions and building relationships. It helps us with our behaviors. You know, sometimes I can be really quick to snap, and I can not think through things, and I can be more reactive. And that's probably when my serotonin levels are a little bit down and not in that balanced state. Serotonin also can have an effect on our appetite and on our digestive system and how it's working well or not so well. It can have an impact on our sleep and whether we're able to get a good night's sleep or not. It can have an impact on our memory. You know, we all joke about not having the best of memory at times, or I'm getting older and so my short-term memory isn't as good. And it all has to do with the chemistries in our brain. It also has a lot to do with our sexual desires. So you see that one chemistry, and we're going to talk about like 4 of them, that one chemistry can have such a swing on both emotional and physical state of being. So dopamine is another chemistry that plays a role in our behaviors and our ability to function. It really is connected to our state of motivation. And so when our dopamine levels are low, we don't have that strong desire or that motivation to really do something. When our dopamine levels are up and more balanced, it gives us that drive, that motivation, that passion. So it really, you know, gives us that inner drive of, I'm going to do this and this is why. And it also has a lot to do with those feelings of satisfaction. Knowing that you did a job well and really being satisfied with that. Another hormone that we have within our bodies all naturally is oxytocin, and that is the love hormone. So that's also the hormone that when mamas are in the process of going into childbirth, that oxytocin is what helps the uterine contract. And so it was really interesting to me that it's connected as the hormone of love, because what better connection and there's not a more loving moment in life is when you see that baby for the very first time and that connection that you have. And that's really important for the mama and for the baby, and really for the whole family to kind of bond. So it's also that feeling of bonding. And so you can kind of see it makes a lot of sense for that oxytocin to play a role in the bringing a baby into the world, because it gives you that connection, that relationship. And it's also that it also really helps with that sense of well-being, that everything's going to be okay. It may not be an ideal situation, but everything is going to be okay. I have the ability to work through this. It's really, really important for bonding and for relationships. It gives us that sense of closure, or that sense of closeness and that sense of loyalty within your relationships. Okay, the last hormone we're going to kind of talk about a little bit is cortisol. And that's really associated with our stress. So when we're stressed, that cortisol level goes up. And when that cortisol level goes up, it has an impact on everything. It has an impact on our ability to heal quickly. It kind of puts a damper on all of the other functions within our body. So it kind of puts us in this state of feeling like you just can't quite get things done, and puts you in this more of a drag state. You don't have that motivation, that desire, that passion. You just you're unmotivated, you're tired, you don't care, you don't have the passion. It can really create mood swings. And it can be associated with those feelings of anxiousness as well. Elevated levels can lead to weight gain, which, none of us feel great when we're in a state of gaining weight, right? Or not feeling like we're looking our best. And it is really exacerbated when we're stressed. And some of the symptoms when we're in a stressful situation, the acute symptoms are your heart racing and you feeling kind of sweaty or clammy. Those are the physical manifestations of that kind of state of anxiety or fear. And that's our physical body kind of responding to these increased cortisol levels. So why do we talk about this, and why do I think this is important and how it relates to essential oils? Okay, there's a few things about essential oils that are really important. One, there's a huge connection in just the aromatherapy part of it. So like, as you can see, I have my diffuser going, and just a scent alone can change that biochemistry, okay? So we inhale any scents or aromas through our olfactory system, which is in our brain. And that triggers these biochemical responses, okay? And it happens before we even know it. It hits our olfactory system and it hits our amygdala. So our amygdala is in kind of the deeper center of our brain, kind of the lower part. And what that does is that's like the center of all of our emotions, all of our fears, and it's kind of like the watchdog for us. So when we smell an aroma, our olfactory is kicking in, and so is our amygdala. And before we even recognize the scent, it's changing these chemistry levels. So aroma alone, without even putting the essential oil on or maybe taking them internally, just the aroma can change the response in our body. And it can kind of bring us to a more balanced and state of harmony. And that is super intriguing to me. Have you ever walked in and your mom's baking bread and you kind of go, oh, that smells so good in it? For me, it kind of brings me to this relaxed and safe place, in a place that I want to be, a place of peace and a place of comfort. And that's what essential oils can do. When it hits that olfactory system and it hits the amygdala and it starts changing chemistries, the aromas alone can help bring up that serotonin and that dopamine and that oxytocin level. And when those come up, your cortisol level automatically comes down because you're in a less stressed out state. And so your body kind of becomes into this place of homeostasis or equilibrium or more balanced. And that's really important. That's where we need to be, right? We still want to be able to show emotion, and we still want to have that connection with people, but we want it more balanced. We don't want it reactive. We don't want it like you don't care at all, and we don't want it in that super euphoric, like overly happy state either, right? So we want to keep our serotonin, our dopamine, our oxytocin, and our cortisol all kind of balanced and working synchronously together versus one being higher than the other. And that's when we really can get in an out of state situation. So you can see that emotional stress can have a huge impact on us and can have a huge impact on how we're reacting to things. And that can affect us both acutely, and if we don't get it into a balanced state, it can affect us chronically. And we can start seeing some of our chronic diseases kind of manifesting because we can't keep those things in check. Because it can really have an impact. You can see if that cortisol level is up, and it's affecting some of our body functions like our cardiac state, or kind of living in that state of fear and you're really tense, and so it kind of affects our musculoskeletal systems as well. That's not healthy for us. And so we don't want it to manifest in different systems because we don't have it under control. So emotions trigger cell activity, and that cell activity creates a chemical response. So, and we don't have really we can't tell our mind to quit creating the cortisol or produce more dopamine. Like, we can't just tell ourselves that and do it. Like it kind of triggers naturally. Our body kind of knows. So I do believe in the aspect of positive reinforcement, right? And letting ourselves know that we are enough, that we're doing the best that we can, and giving ourselves those positive affirmations. But our body has to believe it, right? We can't just tell our minds that and our body believe it. We kind of have to show it as we're talking to it as well. Emotions such as grief, being in states of anxiety, or being in chronic states of the blues, if we don't attend to those emotions, they can have an impact on our life and on our body long term. And that's when we can see those chronic diseases start to creep in, and they won't be as noticeable in the beginning because it's just kind of this slow path, and we don't really notice the major changes until